Now, some critics also argue that the topics that are addressed in media effects research are very limited and really dependent upon the funding that researchers get in the first place. And here, it's important to point out that most of the funding for academic research on media effects comes from large institutions, all right? Part of the funding comes from the private sector, right? Businesses, advertisers are interested in figuring out how to persuade people more effectively through media. Political campaigns want to figure out how political ads can be used to get people to vote for their candidate. All right. Government also provides funding for research, but again, a government is only interested in researching certain topics that are of interest to its concerns. So there's a lot of research on media violence because that's a particular issue that legislators are concerned about. The thing is that topics that are not bankrolled by these large institutions don't get a lot of attention, right? So for instance, let's say that some people are worried about environmental concerns and what messages media are presenting about the environment and global warming. Well, that topic may not get a lot of research because businesses or government are less interested in that concern. So it's important to look at how the funding for research shapes the priorities for research that is conducted in the first place. Another real criticism of media effects research is that it tends to be preoccupied with the effect of media on individuals, all right, as we've talked about before. How does media violence encourage a particular individual's aggression? That kind of focus on the individuals tends to ignore the way in which media may affect our society more generally and how media may affect certain social institutions like government, education, or business on a much more macro level. Right, for instance, when we're talking about political advertising, a lot of the research focuses on how a person is or is not affected by a political ad, right? But there are also broader questions about how political advertising may affect our political system and our democracy more generally, right? Some critics worry about how political ads misinform people, make people more likely to vote for people based on superficial concerns like how they're portrayed in ads, and that diminishes our society as a whole, right? So, but those larger concerns about how media and advertising may affect broader social institutions, that doesn't really get as much emphasis as this whole focus on the individual and how individuals are affected. And some critics argue that's a problem. So, as we've talked about, there are two broad schools of research about the media. Earlier on, we had talked about the more conventional media effects research that was based more in the social sciences. The second type of research is referred to as cultural studies. And again, that school of research is based much more in the humanities and distances itself from the scientific method and claims of objectivity that are so central to conventional media effects research. Some of the earliest work in cultural studies goes back to Karl Marx and Antonio Gramsci that we talked about in a previous chapter. These intellectuals and scholars looked very broadly at the way in which the media of a society tended to support certain hierarchies of power in that society. In their own ways, Marx and Gramsci argued that societies tend to be very inequitable, all right? That there are pretty pronounced gaps between rich and poor, and that there are other aspects of inequality that fall along the lines of gender, race, age, economic class, all right? Marx and Gramsci and scholars that followed these two intellectuals tried to examine how media supported these systems of inequality based along the lines of factors like economic class and gender. All right? For instance, Karl Marx, of course, of Marxist fame, Marx argued that there has been a major conflict in our society between the capitalist class, businesses, and working people, all right, and that there has historically been a great deal of economic inequality between those business owners and capitalist interests that maintain most of the wealth and power in society, and ordinary working people that make relatively little, all right, in terms of income or salaries. And that people like Marx were interested in looking at how the media of a society encouraged people to accept these really pronounced inequalities. And in his case, looking at how the media socialized people to accept this huge gap between the wealth of capitalists and the poverty of working class people. And Gramsci himself, through his concept of hegemony, examined similar themes about how media encouraged people to just accept the various types of inequality that existed in society as natural, normal, acceptable. Marx and Gramsci also looked at how popular culture distracts people from really addressing social injustices and inequality that exist in society. Here, for instance, the argument is that people are socialized to rely on media for escapism, all right? That we watch mindless reality TV shows like The Kardashians, keep up with celebrity gossip about Justin Bieber, all right? And that by focusing on all of this trivial stuff, we ignore really important issues about how certain groups in society are being mistreated or exploited, all right? That if we're watching all this reality TV, that distracts us from paying attention to people that are exploited or abused in sweatshops, low-wage labor. We ignore important issues about racial profiling or discrimination against Arabs and Muslims in the post-9/11 era. That we don't pay attention to how there's this growing gap between rich and poor as corporate executives make more, while more middle-class people are just struggling economically. All right, so we don't really address all those issues because we're so distracted by the trivial nature of popular culture. And people like Marx and Gramsci were particularly concerned with the role of subordinate groups in society and the way in which certain social groups have been confined to second-class status, and how media encourages people to accept and agree with this oppression of these other groups. For instance, when we're talking about gender, all right, cultural studies researchers look at how popular culture encourages people to accept the idea that women are less powerful than men and should be given less authority and power than men and should be paid less than men. That some scholars argue that the portrayal of women as sex objects or housewives and homemakers encourages people to believe that it's males that should be in charge in society, whereas the role of women is simply to sexually please and nurture males. So again, cultural studies research looks at the role of subordinate groups in these societies and the way in which media reinforce this subordinate status.